let us dive into this big topic here, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I don't have much lined up in the form of introducing this topic, but more so questions. And I'll start with this one. Pretty easy. How do you assess the Leafs weekend? Likes, dislikes? And this is an important question that I want you guys a little bit focus on. Did they get outplayed in both contests? I do agree that they got outplayed in the Winnipeg Jets game. It was a sloppy defensive effort. Justin Wall Sosha Wall rather, did not look his best. So I think they did definitely get outplayed. Winnipeg definitely deserved the win, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on the Minnesota game as well, because coming back down 3-0, I didn't think they were going to come back. They looked pretty lifeless heading into that second period, third period, but they turned it around. And unfortunately, the shootout, the game's worst friend, comes back to haunt them and they lose in the shootout. So Jared, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the weekend overall? Likes, dislikes, and of course, did the Leafs get outplayed in both games, or is it just that one against the Jets that is really glaring at us right now?
Well, overall, the weekend it was very meh. I mean, we lost both games, but it's not like we got dominated or killed. They were kind of just games where there was a lot of issues with how the Leafs played, and it ended up resulting in us losing. Very much what I found was some old habits that we've seen in past years, where it was like a tale of two games, where it's like the start we're getting ridiculously outplayed, but then we claw our way back, which as much as it makes for an exciting game, it's not really how you expect a Stanley Cup contending team to play. We were sort of getting in the habit of starting to play games consistently all the way through, good 60-minute hockey, good defensive hockey. In this weekend, the past two games I've seen, we've kind of gone back to some of our old habits, which obviously isn't something that I love to see. I wouldn't say we got dominated both games. I mean, definitely Winnipeg. I think they played like the better team, and it showed in the end score. I think for the Minnesota game, they started the game off better, but as well, a lot of puck luck resulted in them getting off to that 3-0 lead. So as much as you can never say the Leafs were playing well when we're down 3-0, so I would say the Minnesota Wild had a better start to the game than we did. However, it's not like they absolutely were dominating us. It's just they got a few lucky ones in. Then we definitely turned that game around, and the second half was pretty much all Leafs, I'd argue. An overtime was pretty competitive, and then it went to the shootout. It's not real hockey. I could have a whole rant about that. I'm not a fan of the shootout. Whatever, they scored the two. They scored a nice Zuccarello goal. Kaprizov scored a beautiful one where he just chipped it over Campbell. Nothing you could do. We lost that game. So I wouldn't say we got dominated in both. I'd say definitely the Jets outplayed us. But for for Minnesota, I'd say it was pretty half and half, where Minnesota certainly started the game off better, which isn't a good thing. I mean, as a Leafs fan, I'm still going to criticize the way the Leafs started that game. It's not good that we're not starting off games on time, because I thought we sort of nipped that problem in the butt. We seem to have played really good as of late. But just these past two games, pretty weak starts where teams have been able to capitalize on that, get off to big leads. We've been able to claw our way back, which does show it is a testament to the fight that's within this organization, within this team. But overall, not our best games, not anything I'm panicking about. We've been such a good team. A shootout loss, and then just a regular loss. You aren't going to go 82-0. Even the eventual Stanley Cup champion is going to have a few blunders throughout the season, so I'm not stressing, but definitely not our most perfect games.
Yeah, and you mentioned the blunders, and I'm hoping we were talking about this last week pretty extensively. The Leafs were on such a tear last week and weeks prior, best month in franchise history, and we were saying they're pretty much due to hit a couple licks in the road. And let's hope that this 2-game losing streak is the lick. That's what I'm kind of looking forward to in this upcoming week. I believe they got Columbus, Chicago, and one more team that I don't know off the back of my hand, but I think this is a big week for the Maple Leafs. See if they can rebound and see when can you cut off these losing streaks? Because you look at some hot and cold teams, and I don't want the Leafs to fall into that category. They're going straight, winning a bunch, like the Maple Leafs just did, dominated all of November, and then they're losing a bunch as well. So I'm hoping they could just stop it right there, stop the bleeding, and reset. And you mentioned the fight. We will be getting definitely into the fight in this Toronto Maple Leafs team. But Adam, I want to ask you this question before we make our way into both the defensive concerns of this Maple Leafs team and, of course, that big Winnipeg Jets game yesterday. What did you make of the week and the Minnesota game in general as well? We're not going to put too much focus on it, but I'm sure it's worth noting because they did come out on the losing end in what looks to be the games. I'm not a fan of the shootout. It's growing a little bit on me, but still, it's probably the worst. If you're ending a game in the skills competition, like, I don't know, you're leaving it up to chance at that point.
So in my opinion, I didn't watch the Minnesota game. I'm not gonna lie, I was working for the Rams, and then I like went out after. I was listening to it on the radio. It sounded like a pretty intense last 5 minutes. Even the overtime. There was one no call on what was it, Marcus Foligno going to, like I watched the highlights obviously, but that kind of sucked. And like you said, the shootout absolutely sucks. But the most important part of this weekend, they won where it matters. They won the deserve to win meter. 2 for 2, baby. I don't know how. I think something in the Jets game, that model is I have no clue what was going on. Apparently they had an expected goals of 6 in that the Jets game. I don't believe it for a second. But yeah, I can't really speak too much on the Minnesota game, but if we're going to touch on the Jets soon, I have a couple opinions on those.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Jets, all Leafs Nation has a couple opinions on the Winnipeg Jets, Toronto Maple Leafs, and their clash yesterday night. And that's the reason why we jumped onto this podcast so quickly in such a quick turnaround, because this was some must. You have to get your comments out here, because if we push it any further, they're not going to be as relevant. Hockey moves fast, the game moves fast, and news is getting moved all over the place. So if you were to talk about this stuff a little bit after, we wouldn't have the same effect. So don't you worry, we'll be getting to the Winnipeg Jets in just a second. But I want to get into the defensive structure there's a Toronto Maple Leafs, and with the Winnipeg Jets sort of carrying over, they lost Rasmus Sandin. I'm sure we'll be getting into that a lot, but they did lose Rasmus Sandin for, thank God, 2 to 3 weeks. When I saw the injury and what happened, I'm thinking ACL, MCL, something like that, and his knee burst and he's out the rest of the season. Horrible blow, horrible play, and that's his season. And what a great season he was putting together. But he's out for 2 to 3 weeks, so that is sort of looking like that debate we were having. I don't know if you guys recall, but it was about the Maple Leafs defensive core. They stuck with 7 guys instead of 6. They're always sitting a guy every other game, and it's looking like it's always being Liljegren recently. But it just goes to show, if one guy goes down, now you have the guy in your back pocket and you can throw it out there while still being somewhat competitive on the defensive end. And this is the situation, I guess, that they were waiting for to happen. There's the reason why Hall wasn't traded after his horrific performances. Muzzin, who it's now rubbing off on him, he's been looking pretty brutal. So, Evan, I want to turn this one over to you. What did you make of the defensive performances over the last 2 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Like Muzzin and Hall, this pairing is just not it. Last year, as we all know, and I'm sure this is just burned in Leafs Nation, they were the defensive shutdown pairing. Now they are guys who barely deserve to make this team and play for this team for the performance that they're putting out on the ice. So what do you make of them? And I don't know, who do you pair these guys with? Because no matter who they play with each other, they play with other players, nothing is working. Is this an individual thing, or is it a full defensive structure thing?
Well, I think that Jake Muzzin needs to be with a guy like Travis Dermott, or even a guy before he got hurt, Rasmus Sandin, like just someone who's back, like he'll stay in the defensive zone. But I think I think Jake Muzzin needs to be with a defenseman more just in the offensive zone as well. Like that's where we saw his success in LA. In terms, I think he just guy like TJ Brody, someone who shares the same game as him, because I just don't think out, and you got to try something new. In terms of the games over weekend, I didn't think that. Am I cutting out?
Yeah, just a little bit, but
Just a little, it's getting a little bit better. Don't you worry.
Like I can make out what you're saying. It's not like a
All
big
right.
thing.
So what I'm trying to say, like over the weekend, I think I really like Joseph Wall, and I really think he's a great goaltender, especially a great backup to have now that Mrazek is out. I think you were hyped in the first 2 games. You got to think he played Buffalo in the first game and then played a very depleted New York Islanders team in the second game. So I would say this was his biggest test this regular season, just going up against a very competitive team like the Winnipeg Jets. And I didn't like last night's game got a little out of hand. I think that referee should never ref a game again. Now that I'm looking at his past games that have like had these monster brawls, and he seems to be the ref involved in all of them. So I think there should be a cause for concern there as well. But in that Minnesota game, I really like the resilience of the team to come back down 3-0. You know, obviously they're not going to have these streaks where they're winning 15 of 17. You're going to go back. You're going to come back down to mother, and it's not going to be perfect. But if these are the games that they needed, where you're down 3-0 and then you claw your way back into it. I hate the shootout, but I've heard not reports, but there are also just people and GMs that believe it's too much to do 8-minute overtime, because you're running out of players out on the ice. Like, when you're in overtime, you need your 9 best players out there, and your body's not gonna, your body won't be able to adjust to 8 minutes because your season. So I understand the backlash with it, but it sucks because I hate that games are decided by the goalies, basically.
And I mean, it's a fair, like, this is what I never understood. I know you were making this comment in our group chat a little bit earlier in the week. It was about the overtime. Why can't you extend 6 minutes, 7 minutes? Like, an extra minute would suffice. I was watching something. Steve Dangle was talking about it, extending if your power play expires and you're on the power play in overtime, it should just extend the entire thing. Once the power play ends, the overtime ends. I'm not a big fan of that because I really don't see the big point to it. I don't know. It's
terrible.
I don't think that one is it. But if you extend the full overtime an extra couple of minutes, and the GMs do make a good point. Like, your guys are getting exhausted. You guys have all played hockey. If you're playing with that much open ice, you're bound. Plus the extra 60 minutes on top of that, you're bound to get gassed. So I understand where that's coming from. Probably the NHLPA is probably going to side with that as well. But all the fans of the game want to see the extended overtime. It's probably, if not top 3 entertainment sports-wise that I have ever watched, when you're watching a good overtime period, when the guys are going back and forth and not just gassed the entire 5 minutes. So I think it's worth something considering, but I want to bring this back to the defense of the Toronto Maple Leafs, because it's just, especially this last game that we watched, the Winnipeg Jets, we were all discussing it in our group chat, and this group chat can be mentioned quite a bit in this episode because a lot of the talking was done there before the show. But so many odd man rushes for the Winnipeg Jets in that last game. And I'm going to transition to the Winnipeg Jets game in just a second. So many odd man rushes. Muzzin was always caught, and Justin Hall was always caught. And I saw Sandin a couple times. Some of them weren't even his fault. Nobody was coming back to help him. So what did you see, Adamo, in that game, especially considering there were so many guys going up and down the ice and everyone's getting caught? And if you count how many goals you want to about the Winnipeg Jets, how they scored last night, a lot of them were odd man rushes, and it's just so weird how they come to happen. What did you make of the odd man rushes going the other way for the Maple Leafs, and what was the root to that problem?
Oh, it's simple. Like, a lot of the odd man rushes happened on the Muzzin Hall pairing, and man, I say the personnel or the players aren't good enough to defend the rush. Okay, what can we do about this? Okay, I go look at my advanced stats. I watch the games. It's almost like our best transition defender is sitting in the press box every night. Travis Dermott, this is his specialty. This is like the reason I love Travis Dermott so much is this exact reason. He's fantastic edges, phenomenal gap control, and can move the puck. Exactly what Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall have not been doing this season. Only Lord knows why Travis Dermott is still press box every night when we're literally struggling with his specialty. Like, you could feel that he's not out there. It's awful. Poor friggin' Joseph Wall. Poor Joseph Wall. Like, we let him out to dry. I was so frustrated last night. Like, that was my big thing last night, because God, you have the answer. It's not like we need to go trade for a puck moving defenseman or a guy who's good in transition. You have him, and he's literally younger than these guys, and he's just sitting in your press box, and you're wasting him. It's so annoying every night. There should never be an instance where Travis Dermott sits anymore. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, and I mean, your wish is about to come true. He will not be sitting for quite a while now, considering Sandin. And this is what it had to take, which is really unfortunate if you're looking at it from that point of view. It had to take an injury to one of your best, I wouldn't say rookies because he's not a rookie, but you're one of your best young defenders who's been having a phenomenal season. It takes that to finally open your eyes and say, yeah, this kid's got what it takes, throw him in there, and only out of pity because of an injury. So you're going to see much more of Travis Dermott. I'll guarantee you that. And I totally agree with that. His game is totally different than what we've seen from other Leafs defenders. And I'm noticing noticing, I don't know if you're with me, Jared, on this or Adamo, but I'm noticing each defender on the Leafs has their own style, what they incorporate to the game that differs them from other defensemen, not just in the National Hockey League, but with this group. And that's what Dermott brings. He's always coming back, and it's just his edges, like you were saying, they're so clean, and he's getting all the, like, I don't know. I really like Dermott. I agree with everything you're saying, and we're going to see a lot more than him. Hopefully, if the theory is correct and if what we're seeing is correct, we're not going to see as many odd man rushes with Dermott in the lineup. And finally, I want to get to the meat and potatoes here. I'm sure we'll be spending a lot of time on this. So if you're listening to this or watching this on your computer or wherever you are watching, put some coffee on, because we will be here for quite a while talking about this marvelous yet extraordinary, outrageous, whatever word you want to use, whatever metaphor you want to put in there. I think it all applies, because this Winnipeg Leafs game had it all. And it's hard to say. These teams wanted to get rid of each other last year, playing each other 10 times. The Leafs came out on top with 6 wins, Winnipeg the 4. And it just looked like they were playing themselves way too much. It was getting pretty boring. Well, what a way to open up the floodgates. A new rivalry has been born. And it's just, for me, for all the wrong reasons. What a poorly officiated game, at least in my perspective. This is what I want to ask you guys. What were your thoughts on the officiating? This is the big question that's been looming over Leafs Nation. Should this player have gotten this penalty over here, penalty over there? And then obviously what we're learning now, additional suspensions. Both players who were in the altercation, Neil Pionk and Jason Spezza, were given hearings today. Spezza was an in-person one, which means I believe it's a minimum 5 games and you have the ability to go over. And I believe Pionk had the phone one, and that was 2 games he got. It was 2, correct? Yeah, he got 2 games. So
Spezza's hearings tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern.
All right, so we're going to listen to our hearing to Spezza tomorrow, obviously, when we get the news. And I don't know, guys, what were your thoughts on the officiating? Because there's so much to unpack, so much to go look at. So, Jared, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the officiating in this game? And one thing I want to ask, and this is probably going to be a big ask from both you and probably your cohorts here and Leafs Nation, try to put the biased aside. What were your thoughts?
Don't worry with me.
Just,
I'm going full.
Evan's perfect here, but no, because
I'm going no bullshit.
He's straight up. He's blunt with it. But everyone I've been hearing, Twitter, I'm sure you can look. It's a war zone right now, full of Leafs fans, salty Leaf fans. Not all Leafs Nation, as we know, is the best group to represent us, and Winnipeg Jets fans as well. They have been quite salty on their end. But I just want to get a broad perspective. Just professional look. Jared, what do you got for the officiating for me?
The officiating was garbage. It was absolute garbage. It's not a Leafs fan, Jets fan thing. It's they missed a lot of calls. The players responded to that by saying, "Oh, they aren't calling anything, so let's go fucking crazy." And it ended up turning into warfare. It was, I'm not going to say one person's big suspension call wasn't dirty. I'm not going to say Spezza's didn't deserve a suspension. Absolutely did. It was dirty. Pionk's was ridiculously dirty as well. In general, though, they let the game get away from them. And Brad Meyer has a history of doing this. That's the referee that was refereeing tonight's game. He was in there discussing this on Steve Dangle. He was the referee in Game 2 of our 2019 series against Boston, where I believe that was the game where Kadri got suspended. That was the game where Jake DeBrusk had his whole stuff. So, this ref has a history of when games get super chippy, he just decides, you know what, I'm going to not do anything. I'm just going to let this play out. And
he kicked Kadri out of that game.
I know, but I'm just saying he has a history of kind of letting games get out of hand. It's not a new thing with him. He kind of has a history of doing that. And the reffing was just garbage. They needed to do something to address what happened when Pionk got knee on knee against Rasmus Sandin. But in general, I mean, there was the Pierre-Luc Dubois picking up Matthews and ragdolling him, which, again, I don't know why Matthews doesn't do anything. Matthews is a pretty big boy. He's 6'3". I don't know why Matthews doesn't just turn around and knock out Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Dubois is huge.
So is Matthews, though. Matthews is a big boy. He needs to start standing up for himself a little bit. But regardless, they need to do something to address that situation. They need to do something to address the knee on knee. And if that happens, I know, Rasmus Sandin gets injured, of course the Leafs are going to retaliate. I'm not saying, oh, you call one penalty and nothing's going to happen. Of course, we know these guys are hockey players. They're grown men. They're pumped full of adrenaline. Wayne Simmons is there to beat the shit out of Neil Pionk there. That's his job. Or Nick Ritchie, whichever, pick one out of the bundle, whatever one you want to say. I know, there's players on the team where their whole job is to stand up for your players and fight back after a situation like that. But all I'm going to say is the ref, that's their job, is to come and try to gain as much control back in the game as possible. And they didn't even try. I know, likely you call a penalty and still someone's going to get out of the penalty box and go attack Pionk. We know that's probably going to happen. But the fact that the ref didn't even like try to do anything to take control back of that game, like he kind of just let it get out of hand. I put a lot of blame on Brad Meyer and the reffing crew. They I'd say let the game get out of hand, and that what ended up happening at the end of the last 5 minutes, it wasn't hockey. It was complete and utter warfare. No one at the end was trying to really score anything. It just became who the hell could, how many people in Winnipeg could we beat the shit out of? How many people in Toronto could we beat the shit out of? Like it became a joke. And as much as it's fun to watch as a spectator's perspective, it wasn't hockey. It was a joke. The ref absolutely let the game get out of hand. They didn't do all that they're capable of in getting the game back under control. And I think it was absolutely ridiculous.
Game management, Jared. That's the word that's everyone's been throwing around. Game management. That's what the referees failed to do. And you look at, for example, Wayne Simmonds, 11th minute or 12th minute, whatever it was, he gets a 10-minute misconduct and it was rightfully earned. He went out and earned his 10 minutes, going off after the face off and slashing just about everyone on that sheet of ice. But you give him a 10, there's 12 minutes left in the game. Why is he not out of the game? And this is not like, obviously, I'm kind of going against the Leafs here, but this is just a fact. If you're looking at it from a spectator's point of view, why are you going to put a dangerous guy who has a history of being dangerous, has a history, and his sole role on this team is in games like this to go at the guys who start this kind of stuff? You give him a 10-minute misconduct. I don't see that angle of it. I don't see how you give offsetting penalties, and this is again bias aside. How you give offsetting penalties to two guys when one guy is ragdolling Austin Matthews. I'm talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois for 10 seconds, and Matthews just sitting there. I disagree with what Matthews was doing. I think he should have got up and socked Pierre-Luc Dubois because I think he's capable of doing that. But how is that just a 4-on-4? Like, why isn't he getting the extra 2 minutes? So many uncertainties. Adam, I'm going to point it to you, and then I'm going to just bring it all in, and we'll get our own opinions there. But what are your thoughts on the officiating last night? So much to pick from, and if you even want to separate it play by play, that'd be even better. But what were your thoughts on the officiating?
I think two things can be true from last night. I think the officiating was garbage, and I also don't think the officiating would have controlled this game. I don't think there's anything the officials could have done that would have prevented Neil Pionk hitting Sandin. I don't think there's anything that the officials could have done that would have prevented someone taking a dig at a Winnipeg Jet player. Like they could have, the worst case scenario, I looked it up. I'm like, okay, what can the refs realistically do in this situation? Like the fucking throw the book at them. What can they do? Okay. On the Pionk play, you can give a 5-minute penalty and a game misconduct for intent to injure. You can give them a kneeing penalty. Some guy serves the box. Okay, 14 minutes to go. Leafs have a 4-on-3 for 49 seconds, and then they're on the normal power play, 5-on-4. Okay, let's say the Leafs score, and it's a 1-goal game, and there's 9 minutes to go. You don't think Wayne Simmonds is going to touch that ice, or Kyle Clifford is going to touch that ice, or any of them are going to touch the ice? Jason Spezza is going to get on the ice and take a dig at fucking Pierre-Luc Dubois? Not a shot, not a chance. I know Evan could touch on it. I don't know. I know you guys haven't played like as high of a level hockey, but I'm sure you could even like comment it. You see your young star defenseman, holding his knee in like in a ridiculous amount of pain. That poor guy looked like he was in so much pain. It fires you up like, oh, I'm gonna go fuck up one of their players now. I want my pound of flesh, right? So I don't think a friggin' like I get that we're a soft, go offense, let's score a shit ton of goals team, but they want their pound of flesh. So I like the officials were don't get it twisted. I'm not saying the officials did this right, because I think what they could have done was probably given a 5-minute there and sent Pionk out of the game. They could have called that Dubois and Matthews thing. They probably should have. Did they throw out Spezza? I don't actually remember. Did Spezza get a penalty? Like, I don't think Spezza got a penalty.
I don't believe so.
I don't remember. It was just a
It was all craziness, man.
It was just I honestly don't remember, but it was a shit show out there, and I hate to say it, but that's hockey. Like, emotions run high when shit like that happens, the hockey's such a team-oriented thing where it's one guy goes down, okay, we all got to go fuck them up. Even friggin' Nick Ritchie was going at it with Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's I want to make one comment on that. You guys remember the Joseph Woll play?
Yeah.
Where like Joe Woll came out and like kind of got his fuck Pierre-Luc Dubois because he's a dirty player, but that was fine, guys. Like you can't stick your arm out. You can't stick your blocker out.
You're putting yourself in the wrong position, and that's been
exactly.
a thing.
You're
that
a fucking goalie. Get in the net.
Mm-hmm. No,
I hate when goalies do that shit, and then like the player gets a penalty. It's like, what do you want them to do? Like, if you're a goalie, you're putting yourself in that vulnerable position. If you get hit, then tough shit. Like, you're not supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let your defenseman pick up the puck.
Oh, that was literally what I was gonna say.
Is it my
Like,
turn
he
to
stuck
go?
his blocker out. Oh, you're ready to go. But Mario, I think you were trying to make a point there. But like,
no,
Joseph Woll goes out with his blocker,
Yeah.
and it's
No,
a terrible
idea. It was the thing about, you mentioned positioning. Joseph Woll, obviously the goaltending, it's all about positioning within his position. But you look at even Neil Pionk. Why is he in that position making that play without a stick? You're kind of asking, and this is what I'm curious to see how they evaluate the Spezza suspension, because I'm sure he's going to get suspension and we're going to address it in just a second after I get Evan's points, take those hits, and we'll get into those ones. But it looked pretty dirty to me, and I think a lot of people can see that clear head contact.
200%.
I watched the replays. I watched the ones you sent in the group chat today, the frame by frame, clear headshot there. But again, does the positioning play a factor of Neil Pionk's positioning? I mean, does it play a factor in what he's going to get? Because Neil Pionk shouldn't be there in the first place in that position. But again, Spezza is going full tilt. I think there's full intent. What?
Here's the issue with Spezza's, though. He clearly, you could see he leans down to hit Neil Pionk.
He was trying to get him.
He was trying to get. Is it my turn there?
Go.
Okay,
Yeah.
First of all, I'm starting off like this. Jason Spezza, you're a selfish motherfucker. Because if you didn't do that, Neil Pionk's suspension would have been a lot greater. And the problem is that you did that hit, which is why it alleviates Neil Pionk and now puts all of the stress onto you. I think Jason Spezza should be suspended 5 games because there's 3 things that were wrong. 1, retaliation, which the league is trying to get rid of. 2, Neil Pionk is a defenseless player in that act because he's on the ice without a stick, and you could clearly see the intent that Jason Spezza leans down to go hit Neil Pionk. And 3, the head contact with his knee, nonetheless, which we saw what happened with John Tavares in the playoffs.
I'm happy you did. I was thinking of that as we were preparing.
Like, imagine if Jason Spezza's knee was literally an inch to the right.
Like, he dies.
Like, it's a scary play. It is
like, you could have seen something so much worse. And like, I understand we're in a chat with a bunch of Leafs fans, but you got to understand that, like, what Jason Spezza did was a lot worse than what Neil Pionk did.
100%.
Like, I don't think you can say that both were the same. And in regards to the Neil Pionk play, like, I understand, like, I would not have been surprised if he got a 5-minute major, but then no suspension afterwards, because we saw this with Drew Doughty in Dallas, where Drew Doughty got a knee-on-knee hit. Dallas player was given a 5-minute major, but then there was no suspension following that. We saw the same thing with Alexander Barkov in Florida, which I was pissed about because I have him on fantasy, and Barkov's leg turned into a pretzel, and there was no suspension on that either. So I think the reason why Neil Pionk was given the suspension was for the sole reason that the game got out of hand after that hit. I think if nothing happened after that hit, Neil Pionk wouldn't have been suspended for it. But I also think that what Jason Spezza did was completely unnecessary. You're a veteran in this league for how many years? You should be golfing with Joe Thornton right now. Like, you shouldn't be in the NHL. He's too old. I'm gonna say it.
He's been so good though.
You're treading. Your Leaf fans are gonna shoot arrows.
If you mean actual age, like, technically he shouldn't be this good.
Most.
But he is too old for
he's too old for the current age. Like, he's too old for the current age of the Leafs, and it's hard to put him anywhere besides the 4th line. And if he's playing minuscule minutes anyway.
He's been unbelievable. Jason Spezza has been so good.
I'd say unbelievable is a stretch. I mean, he's not.
He's been pretty damn good. Like, consistently in games where like the Leafs aren't showing up, he is the one player that is showing up each and every night. I love Jason Spezza. Highly considering getting a jersey.
Okay, I don't think he's the difference maker on a winning team, but
No, he hasn't been that. You know what? To back up your point, Jared, I randomly clicked on ESPN's like the split stats. In games where Leafs have won, he has 4 points in 17 games. In games where they've lost, he has 7 points in 9 games.
He's consistently like, this is so besides the point. We're going to get back to what happened, but just gonna defend Jason Spezza for me because I see Evan coming in with Jason Spezza slander. Not saying what he did was okay, but like he is consistently in a game where the Leafs aren't showing up. He is always there each and every night, getting the team fired up. I mean, you look at a few years ago, the Columbus series when we were down 3-0 with 3 minutes left. He was the one who got into a fight and got the team fired up. Like at the time, a 37-year-old coming in, going ham, like punching people to get the team fired up, and we ended up coming back in that game. I don't you dare criticize Jason. You can criticize what he did in that moment, but as a player,
okay, don't
criticize Jason Spezza.
What he did in that moment, I wouldn't be surprised if it's even more than 5 games because it was because I know the NHL player safety is going to look at the possibility of what if that did happen to the point where Neil Pionk is hit right in the head, and then that could have ended his season and almost could have ended his career based on what's going on. Like you're putting your kneecap right into his face. I didn't like it. Look, I don't know what happens because he can also be fined as well. It could be he will lose salary money anyway, but you could also fine him even more for what happened. But like I don't know. I thought what he did made the whole situation a lot worse. And I also didn't think Neil Pionk's hit was intentional at all. Rasmus Sandin takes the shot. Neil Pionk's coming in this direction, and then Rasmus Sandin, after he takes it, moves his body. Neil Pionk had the intent of hitting him during the shot. It just seems like when Sandin moved, it put Neil Pionk in a situation where he was like, oh crap, like I'm going to hit his knee now instead of his body.
Yeah. I was actually scared to say that because I low-key agree with you. I don't think there was intent to injure, which is why, like, I don't know if you could even call a 5-minute major there. I think you call it there's definitely a penalty. I think we can all agree that is 100% a 2-minute minor at least. I kind of agree where it was like, I don't know if it was intentional to, I don't think he was intent to injure, but there was intent to clip him in the knee, which can result in injury. Like intent to injure to me is like, I'm going to like
Spezza's
behind you, I'm just going to fucking, that was intent to injure. You know what that reminded me of? Like as Evan said it, he said the Tavares play. It reminds me of when a quarterback is sliding and you go and hit him, you know what I mean? No, like it's such a dangerous play because that was the word. Yeah. It's targeting. Like Neil Pionk could have died. Like a knee hits him in the temple. Spezza's going fast, and there's
can I ask you this? Because we're going to obviously hear what's going to happen tomorrow when he gets his additional hearing in person, whatever. Do what ifs play a role in what he's going to get? Do what ifs play? What if he was here? What if he was 3 inches away and it hit his head? And what if he went unconscious? Do these play any factor in what amount of games he's going to get, et cetera, X amount of games? Is that what we're sort of, do you think it's going to go that way? Is it going to be a, what if this happened? What if this happened? Or are you looking clearly, he hit him, he was okay after? Because you look at, Evan, we were talking about this this morning, the McDavid one. McDavid's not receiving additional discipline because nothing happened. He slammed him against the boards, got the game misconduct, but Kempe went out next play on the power play that he sort of drew and tucked it in. Like, are you looking at what ifs or what happened if you're giving Spezza some discipline?
I don't know. Well, wait, now that you just brought up that McDavid, I know, like, I don't want to get sidetracked. I don't think that should have been a 5 then. Like, if Adrian Kempe is back on the ice seconds after that play and then scores a goal, how can you let McDavid sit in the box any longer? Like, that should just be, if you want to do a double minor for boarding or even a 2-minute, like Kempe's out there the next play. Like he didn't even go to the locker room.
Well, he was all bloody, to be fair. So like in the moment,
So-
it looked a little serious.
Yeah, but then you like evaluate and realize that 30 seconds later he's
Yeah.
back on the ice. Like, it's a bad look when that happens because the game was so close by then. It was a 2-1 game.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's why you have to look at results, right? Like to answer your question, Mario, like even what ifs. Like I think that like even the Sandin or the Pionk suspension was a case of what if, because I think if Sandin just gets up and keeps playing, like I don't
Is
even
there a
think there's a
suspension
penalty
there?
called.
Is
I
there a
swear to God,
suspension there?
I don't think they call a penalty.
Is there a suspension if he doesn't get hurt?
Sorry?
If Sandin doesn't get hurt and he's limping
I
off
don't
the
think so.
ice, horrible scene, is he getting is
I
Pionk
don't
getting
think
a
so.
suspension? So
I don't think so because I think no, continue.
No. So is that like, is this has to happen now for players to get suspended? Do players have to get hurt to get suspended? Do you have to look at the what if scenario and say, well, what if, like there was for Spezza? I'm trying to segregate this. I'm not trying to like combine the two. I'm trying to separate them. For Pionk's, or sorry, for Spezza's, what if you're looking at the what if factor? What if something happened if he was a couple millimeters different and he's knocked out cold? What's the suspension looking like there? If thankfully he's okay, but the full intent to injure was there. Like this is why it's such a confusing. I don't think I've seen a suspension or a hearing that's going to be as controversial like this. Granted, and kind of funny, it's coming from a Leafs perspective, and we have to discuss it thoroughly. But I don't know. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. Like the what if factor, and we've seen it throughout the years. I think this one's now taken more prevalent scenario where what if something happened like this? Is it going to change what he's getting? I don't know. It's an interesting thing to look at. Interesting angle to take nonetheless.
100%, I think it does, because I've always been like this. I've been fucking throw the book at the players because I hate seeing injuries. As someone who fucking literally dealing with an injury off a very similar for Rasmus Sandin, awfully similar. Like I stuck his knee into me. I went down, now I've separated shoulder, and I can't even put on deodorant. Like I'm throw the book at them because that's the only way they're going to learn. Because not only are they missing time with their team, but they're losing money. Neil Pionk is missing 2 games and is losing on 60 grand. That's literally what the average Canadian makes in a year. So if you throw I'm not going to say 10 games, but like a 10-game suspension for a guy, you're losing like probably $500,000, maybe even more. So it's definitely.
Yeah, but you can't fault a guy for how much money he makes. Like,
no, but I'm saying like it hurts. Like if you're a star player and you're making $8 million, you're going to lose more money when you're suspended. So it's going to give you more incentive not to do something dirty, right?
Oh, I thought you were saying like if someone makes, they should be suspended longer for like.
No.
I don't know. Like I don't know. Like that's kind of my thoughts on the 2 incidents. Jared, I don't know, you haven't spoken a little bit. Is there anything else that we should clear up about these 2? Have we hit the nail on all of them? Because I have one more thing that I want to get into about this this team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and what happened in this game. But anything we're missing out on? Is there anything else that we should add?
Well, you guys pretty much nailed everything, but I just want to add to the point about when they're talking about the suspension, should they suspend based on what like the intent and what the situation was or what the end result is? I think you hope in most situations, like what the player did is more important than the end result. Because you could have an incident where there's no intent to injure, but it results in an injury. And you could also have an attempt where it's super egregious what something does, but the player walks out unscathed. So I think at the end of the day, what the player did is more or should be more important than the end result. But in situations like this, especially when a big injury is the result of the situation, it gets people mad. It gets people talking. It gets people mad at the league or writing emails. That ended their career. It ended their season. Like you kind of have to bring up these other factors. I'm not saying it's how it should be. I think at the end of the day, regardless of what the end result is, if a player does something illegal and dangerous, a player did something illegal and dangerous, and as a result, they should be punished regardless of what the end result is. But I'm just saying, in this situation, I think you do a little bit at least have to consider what the end result is. I'm not saying it should fully define how many games they get. As biased as you may want to call me, like of course, on initial reaction, I'm more mad at Neil Pionk than Jason Spezza, but kind of taking a bit more time to look at it and think about it, I think it's pretty clear in watching the highlight back. Pionk, yes, he has a history of being dirty, but it's not maybe as egregious as I initially thought looking back at it. And for Spezza's, actually, I'm going to apologize for something. When on the broadcast, for some reason, I don't know, like the angle they showed it at, it did honestly look like Spezza missed his head. But Adamo this morning in our Ryerson group chat sent in screenshots, and no, like I was completely wrong, and I apologized after. I was completely wrong there. There's pretty clear contact to the head, so it could have ended up being a lot more dangerous. So no, both are guilty. I mean, both deserve suspensions. But as much as I'm gonna say that the ref stepping in would have maybe prevented or somewhat prevented what ended up happening, at the end of the day, Spezza came in. You injured my rookie or young defenseman, I'm going to kill you. And he came in, trucking him, and it could have been a lot more serious than it ended up being. So, no, I think otherwise you guys pretty much nailed everything. A pretty crazy situation. I still think the ref, at that point, like, I know no matter what the ref does, the end result, with an injury like that, is probably going to be the game's going to get out of hand. But the ref's job is to step in and try to take as much control of the game as possible, and they just didn't do that. And to Adamo's point, I'm trying to think of how he phrased it because it was a little bit ago now. But he was basically saying that where no matter what, the Leafs are going to go crazy when their defenseman gets injured, but at least stand up to the point where the storyline after the game isn't that the refs should have done more. Like, let the story be the refs did everything, and still the Leafs came in and did something crazy. Then it completely changes everything. The fact that the refs didn't do their part in stopping things makes them look very bad in the situation.
Or
go ahead.
Or the storyline shouldn't be like what Neil Pionk did is bad, but look what Jason Spezza did. Because I feel like that's now why Spezza is having an in-person is possibly Neil Pionk, even though I don't think Neil Pionk would have had an in-person. But now, like, there's an extent to, like, if you want to show your frustration, fine. But there's a line, and I feel like Jason Spezza really crossed.
No, and looking back at it, like, initially I'm like, no, you're standing up for your player, whatever. But taking a bit of a step back, like, looking back at it, I'm completely admitting now, no, like, that's unacceptable. You can't do that. Like, I'm completely putting my hands up. Initially, I was super heated, like, Neil Pionk, go to hell, and Jason Spezza, no, he's sticking up for his teammate. You can't do that. I'm gonna take a bit of a step back and say, no, that was definitely crossed the line. It's egregious. And if you're a veteran player, yes, there's something to be said about a veteran sticking up for a young kid, but you need to know better in that situation and take a bit of a step back and not do that. I'm not saying Pionk deserves leeway, whatever. Like, Pionk, absolutely, you can't knee someone. He needs someone. I'm not gonna say it looks like there was so much intent there, but it's a player that does have a history of doing stupid and dangerous things, and the end result is a player being out for a long period of time. Not saying that completely needs to change everything. I know that end result in the injury can't be the defining factor because you could have fluke incidents all the time, but it does need to be a little bit taken into consideration that I'm not even going to say his, like, egregiousness, because I don't think looking back it was super egregious, but his stupidity and him just not being as careful as he can and just skating right into him with his knee angled at a way where he could very easily knock it into Sandin's knee. His not being careful resulted in a player being out for an extended period of time, and that definitely needs to be I'm going to say definitely needs to be taken a look at. It is being taken a look at. We're going to find out what the end result of that is.
So a couple things that we can take away from, I kind of want to just sum it up before we move into this big question that I want to ask you guys. First of all, we saw a side that we never really want to see from Jason Spezza, the guy who's always go Willie, always getting the boys together, getting them hyped up, being such an impact player when their team is down. We saw something where, and Leafs fans, I would hope if you're really a true Leafs fan and you're listening to this, I would hope that you're putting a blame on Jason Spezza. He deserves the beaten stick here. He did, like Jared said, cross the line. I think we should all agree on that there. So we saw a side of Jason Spezza that, personally, I'm hoping we don't see, because there's one thing about showing toughness. There's another thing about showing a dangerous play, and that's what Jason Spezza did. So hoping we're going to see that. Another thing, intent to injure versus what ifs. There's a big difference when you're looking at it when you're analyzing a suspension point of view. I think we talked about that pretty drastically and how it's going to relay into this Jason Spezza incident. The Sandin incident on Neil Pionk on Sandin. I don't know. There was a poor positioning, but again, Pionk has a history of doing that kind of stuff. And I think that factors into what he's getting. And of course, the other two ones that don't get enough attention, but I feel like they should still get some light shown on them. The Dubois and Joseph Wall. That was, I think, Adama, you put it best. Poor positioning is going to get you poor results. And poor positioning ended up almost costing Joseph Wall his head. And this perhaps will be the last time we see Joseph Wall, because I know Peter Mrazek is coming back very shortly. So I'm sure that's a pretty tough way to go out. But again, his tenure as a Leaf, not so shabby, not too shabby. And I couldn't ask for anything more. But again, the final one here, Austin Matthews with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't receive an additional second. And I don't understand where that one's coming from. I think that was one of the mishaps from the officiating rather. And I think that's one area that started getting this game out of hand. If you want to put the blame on one thing that started the entire situation here, it was that play. And that's when everything started getting into a brouhaha. So I think that kind of caps it all off. And in that same breath of Austin Matthews and Pierre-Luc Dubois, what is the identity of this team on Monday, December 6th, 2021? We saw this yesterday. I have never seen, and this is what I sort of had this debate with myself. I've always wished to see a team in the playoffs, in the regular season, show fight, show that they're not going to get pushed around. We have never seen this. This is untreaded waters, personally, for me, you guys as well. Last time we saw this was with Ty Domi, Darcy Tucker, like all those old school guys. They would do the same thing on any given night. First time we have seen this in quite a while, for me, the first time. Does this change the identity fully of this team? And do you like seeing this? And the reason why I asked this, I had this pretty big argument with my father last night when we were watching the broadcast, and it was about, listen, and you guys mentioned it briefly in your points here and there. That game is still intact. You still have a chance before all this stuff happened. I'm saying maybe 12-minute mark of this game. You still have a chance to come back, and you have momentum going into your favor. And I told him that penalty that Wayne Simmonds took when he unleashed it after that hit, and I understand why he did it. That's his role. That's what he's supposed to do. But if you put a handle, if you put a cover on that boiling pot that is Wayne Simmonds, you don't get the penalty. Mark Scheifele doesn't go the other way and score. It's not I believe, what was the score? 5-3 after Scheifele?
It was 5-3, and then
6-3.
Scheifele made it 6-3.
So 6-3. You turn that game into a 6-3 game. You're chasing 3 goals. Scoring 3 goals in 10 minutes in a game like that now is probably the hardest thing to do in all of sport. So I don't know. If you clean it up a little bit and you don't take that penalty and you're Wayne Simmonds, you don't take it, and you don't get anything. It's just a completely same game and you're just going and trying to score the goals. Would you rather see that thing of the Maple Leafs and trying to still stick with it despite that adversity? Or do you want to see something like this happen, show that other teams that you have that physical presence and stick up for one another? Like which side are you on? Are you on the side for go and keep going and grab the 2 points, or this game's over, hasta la vista to it, and just show that you're a team and that you're going to stay like that, and no other team should mess with you? I'll start with you, Adama. What are your thoughts?
That's like a really good question, because like growing up, I've actually always believed it's no, stick up for your teammates. But my coaches have always tried to instill the value of no, don't retaliate. Don't get the retaliation penalty. Go for the 2 points. It hurts your team. And so that's why I'm super torn, because internally when I'm on the ice and someone hits me or someone hits my teammate, I'm like, no, I don't care. I'm going to get a 2-minute penalty. I'm going to set the precedent that no one's going to fuck with us. So I'm honestly, I'm super torn. I think I'm kind of leaning towards the show that you're a team, just because you can do that while being competitive. I think if you are just going for that 2 points, you play like nothing just happened, and you're not really, throwing big hits, because once the big hits start coming, the other team's going to retaliate, and you're going to retaliate. So I'm going to stay on the side of stick up for one another, because this is hockey. This is how the sport works. And the playoffs, that's kind of a big thing too. You look at the Islanders, that's their big thing. So I'd probably stick on that side.
And the thing that I was about to say, different between this is a regular season game compared to a playoff game. You do this, and I fully condone this in a playoff game. Jared, you went on a full rant that unfortunately got deleted a couple of weeks ago, where the whole rule book changes compared to a regular season when you convert to the playoffs. You do what the Leafs did, and that whole thing comes out like we saw last night. You do that in the playoffs, you're not going to get as many penalties as you're not seeing Wayne Simmons get a 10-minute misconduct. Like, it's not going to be anything like that. A lot of that stuff that you saw last night would go by in the playoffs, which is extremely sad to say. But again, it's the cold, hard reality of this game, which is why I ask, and I'm going to turn this one over to you as well, Jared. Would you rather see this fight that we saw in the Maple Leafs last night, or them sticking with it and trying to go for the 2 points, and still, while you're still in that game, try to go for a couple of goals because they had all the momentum in their corner?
I think if you look at on Sunday night, what my dream would be is, we find a way with all that situation to come back and win the hockey game. But I think when you look at a full 82 game season, us showing teams that we aren't going to be pushed around and are going to show some fight is a pretty big thing for our entire identity of our team. For years, the Leafs have been a team that, yes, they could outscore you, and yes, they have a high-flying offense. They're not a quote-unquote hard team to play against. So I do think in the long term, us kind of sticking up for ourselves and showing, not to the extent we did, because I do think that was absolutely wrong, but the mindset of let's stick up for each other is what I like to see with this team. The dream is that we kind of found a way to do both. That would be the ideal situation of let's still keep this being a hockey game rather than an absolute war. Let's still keep trying to score and be competitive. But also, if someone's in the corner, you would go over and slam them into the boards and say, hey, don't fuck with Rasmus Sandin, don't fuck with my team. Like, the dream is you kind of do both. But if you were to only pick one thing, whether it be go to try to tie the game up or stick up for yourself, I think in the long term, a loss in December is not going to mean anything. But showing your team's new identity is something that maybe will have lasting effects. So I think we did make the right call, kind of stepping up, coming together as a team and being aggressive, saying, you're not going to push us around. But we did it in a way where we absolutely crossed the line. And that's something we're going to need to work on, because I just think you kind of need to find a way to do it in a way where you're not going to put the team at risk. You're not going to make stupid penalties. You're not going to get suspended and be held out for a long period of time. So I think there's a way to do what we attempted to do last night without completely going overboard. And I don't think we did that. But I think the mindset that we had in coming together as a team and sticking up for each other is what I like to see, as long as we do it in a better way.
And that was what I was about to say. Like, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, this is great. I've never seen this. Like I said off the top, I've never seen this kind of style they've ever played. Keep it. Do not change it. This is what you need. This is what the playoff teams that go far. And we said this throughout 2019. What comes to time for me, all the Boston series were all based off of the Leafs' toughness. There was a thing that was always burned into our memory. The Leafs were not tough enough to play in this series. They were not tough enough to go up against the Boston Bruins players. They got manhandled, ragdolled, insert the metaphor there. Now you have to kind of find the balance. The Boston Bruins will play that style, but they'll also find a way to claw back in the game if they're down. So if the Toronto Maple Leafs want to be this style of a team, don't cross over that line like you mentioned, Jared, and find a balance. Say, yeah, we're not going to get messed around. You hit our player, we're going to smash your player, but we're not going to take that many penalties and give ourselves or throw that chance away that we have to come back in that game. That's the one thing that I really wanted to make clear. And I guess that was the reason why me and my dad got into this debate. And I want to ask you, Adamo, I'm asking you this question, and Evan, to finish things off. You guys have played much more hockey in my life, in your lives, than I have in mine. Do teams take notice of this kind of stuff?
What do you mean? Like, do they take
note? Not numbers. Do they take notice that you can't push these guys around because they just put on display what the Boston Bruins would do in 2019 in the playoffs, 100%. Or what the Maple Leafs did last night?
100%. There was this team that we always used to play against, and the coaches always used to tell us, guys, stay safe this game, because we know these guys like to get under your skin. They like to hit you hard, and it definitely is a thing. Like, if you're a team that throws the body, you don't want to get injured. Like, we're still like kids at this point, right? We're not trying to go hurt ourselves, but they, like, to answer your question, 100%.
Evan, what about you? You've played more style hockey in the US. Is it different across the border? Or?
I played in a tournament. Like, I'll always remember this. I played in a tournament. I think it was in Arizona, and we were playing a team called the Mac-Elite Hooligans, who were from New Mexico. And
oh my God,
they were literally one game away from like being kicked out of the tournament because of how many penalties they were taking. And we ended up getting into a fight with them, like legit fist, like punching, the whole thing. unfortunately right in front of the parents, so not the best. But we had a lot of suspensions thrown, very similar to the Winnipeg and Leafs game, where there were just a lot of suspensions thrown out. And we were told before the game, like this team is legit on thin ice. If enough, like, because they're just known for just starting fights, and sure enough, we started one with them, and like you take notice of it, but God, they really live down to their name.
No, the reason why I asked is because I've always heard teams are you're supposed to show your toughness. Teams are going to take notice, show that you can do this. So other teams, they're not going to do it back at you. This is what I'm trying to like, just so I want to clarify, because I, again, have not played. And Jared, you might have to say the same thing as me.
Nah,
but there's
Jared
also
knows.
like a
Jared
limit,
knows.
like
Tough guy.
Like you gotta like, there's a difference between like being a bunch of like idiots, but then also being like a gritty team to play against.
Mm-hmm. Is it a scare tactic that you're showing? Like, oh, these guys are going to do this kind of stuff.
Scare tactic.
It's more game plan thing.
Game
you know?
plan. Okay.
Like if a team like hits a lot, you kind of like, hey, we know these guys are friggin' huge.
Are you matching that
probably not
energy,
that
or
fast.
are you matching that
Well,
energy,
you
or are
better.
you just gonna say, okay, just
Well,
play it safe?
I've always like, I friggin' I'm playing like almost men's league now. I'll fully admit it. Like I was a dirty player. Like, and I know I was a dirty player. I used to do dirty shit, but I would never change my game for like
I sent a kid to
how
the
a
hospital.
team.
Not a big deal.
I like haven't we all? When you're like doing dirty shit, like that's bound to happen. And I think it's like I said before, it's definitely a game plan thing. Like if you know these guys are big, they want to hit, most likely they're not that fast. And you could say that about the Islanders. They, other than Matt Barzal, they don't have many speedsters out there. Or even the Bruins. The Bruins were never that fast. Like Zdeno Chara wasn't that fast. Their first line was okay, but like they were never a fast team, but they knew how to use their bodies well. So it's
Just
a
slow you
big game
down.
plan thing. Yeah. Yep. 100%.
No, I'm just glad to clear that up. And this is what I think we might be saying about the Leafs team going forward. I like to see this kind of thing, not crossing the line, but seeing that they know how to put that in place. And I don't know, there's a bunch of positives to take from this weekend. That very well may be one that not a lot of people are looking at, but you could definitely pull. Their identity has changed over that 2-game weekend road trip across the East Coast. What part would you say that is? Northeast, North Central, whatever it is. Again,
the irrelevant part
of
North America.
Of North America.
This shit doesn't exist. It's not real.